I'm going to present on how to make requests and using modals to make requests. So before we start, I need to summarize some of the modal rules. Modal rule number one, we put the modal before the verb. So for example, he can speak English. Can, the modal can comes before the verb speak. Modal rule number two, we change the verb into the base form. So for example, she has a car. We use has because it's the third person singular. Okay, she has, he has, it has. But when we add the modal can, then or any modal, we have to change has into the base form have. So she can have a car. Modal rule number three, we change the auxiliary into the base form. Okay, so we might write he is driving. Again, third person singular. He is driving. She is. It is. Mom is driving. But when I add the any modal, may or any modal, we have to change is, the be auxiliary is, to the base form of the be auxiliary. So be. So he may be driving. Modal rule number four is when we add not after the modal. So she could not drive. Not comes after the modal, could. And modal rule number five is to move the modal before the noun for questions. So for example, could she drive? Okay. So what are the modals of request that we're going to learn about and how to use them? They are will, would, can, and could. These are the modals we will be focusing on today when making requests. Something I need to talk about is backshifting modals. Will, when it's backshifted, is would. Can, could, may, might, shall, should. Backshifted modals are used for being polite. They're usually also used for unreal circumstances, such as like, I wish she would be quiet. I wish I could see dragons. Okay, but these are also used when being polite. So, that being said, we use can, could, and will, and would to make requests. For example, can you help me? Could you help me? Will you help me? Would you help me? Okay, when we want to request someone to do us a favor, here this lady, for example, is asking this guy for help. She's saying, can you help me? Can you help me get up on this rock? There are certain rules of formality. We talked about backshifting. So, for example, can is least formal, but the backshifted modal, could, is most formal. I would use could you help me if I'm talking to a teacher or a boss or a stranger, but I use can you help me if I'm talking to a friend. Likewise, will you help me is also least formal. I use that with friends, but would you help me is most formal because it's backshifted from will. Okay. In formal situations, we can also add please at the end of the sentence or after the subject or at the beginning of the sentence. For example, could you help me? No, please. Can you please help me? After the subject would. Will you please? Will you help me please at the end of the sentence and at the beginning? Please, would you help me? Okay? It also goes at the beginning. All right? So, after the subject, at the end of the sentence, or at the beginning of the question. Moving on. To accept a request, we just add modal without a verb. So, for example, could you help me? Yes, I can. Okay. Can you help me? Yes, I can. Would you help me? Yes, I will. Please note that we don't use could or would to accept a request. Could and would are they're backshifted. They are polite, but if we use them to accept a request, it's unreal situation or it's in the past. Let's move on. To reject a request, we negate the modal and we don't add a verb. For example, could you help me? No, I can't. Okay, again, don't use couldn't, don't use wouldn't. Can you help me? No, I cannot. Would you help me? No, I will not. No, I won't. Note these short negative responses are somewhat rude. In that situation, for those situations, we have expressions. Okay, for example, To accept a request, sure, no problem, of course, certainly. To reject a request, sorry, you may not, you cannot, but I won't. I'm afraid I can't. Sorry, but I cannot. Okay, so we use these expressions to soften negative responses. Okay, so we apologize and we give a reason and we say we can't. Okay, moving on. So use can, could, will, and would to make a request. For example, could you help me? To accept a request, use can and will without a verb. Yes, I can. No verb. To deny permission, negate not and use can and will without a verb. For example, no, I can't. Don't use could or would to either deny or grant requests. Okay? Said no, I couldn't. No, I can't. Using cannot, can't, will not, and won't might be rude. Instead, use other expressions to soften negative responses, such as sorry, but I can't, sorry, but I cannot, sorry, but I will not, sorry, but I won't, and the reason. Okay, that concludes this presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much, and please have a nice day.